everybody, and welcome back to Simon's Gaming Academy. Tonight we are going to be looking at another caster from the Convergence of Cyriss, who I am quite big on at the moment. If you haven't watched any video battle reports or heard me talk before, you might not know this, but I am super jazzed that the Convergence have been re-released, and I am mad assembling and painting all of the things which I haven't been able to get even on the black market in the last couple of years. So let's get into it. We're doing Access. He's probably one of my favorite Warcasters, so I'm excited to do this. So let's start with the Warcaster breakdown. So we just go straight through the card, just so everyone's aware of what's going on. He has the two icons on his card, so he's on a 40mm base, and he has Unstoppable, which is of note because Lucan, for some reason, does not have Unstoppable, which we found out last week. He then has two card rules. He has Unyielding for himself, which is +2 arm against melee damage rolls. But he also has Field Marshal Unyielding, which gives +2 armor to friendly cohort models in his battle group against melee damage rolls. So can be quite good, you know, Conservators going up to arm 22 in melee, Colossals going up to arm 22 in melee, just your normal Walkie Jacks going to arm 21 in melee, and your normal Floaty Jacks going to armor 20 in melee. It's all like those numbers are actually quite good, especially when you got 12, 20 Warjacks flying around. Quite good. His spells, we'll go through them one at a time. So Battering Ram is a cost 2, range 8, power 12 offensive spell. Enemy model hit by Battering Ram can be pushed 3 inches directly away from the spell's point of origin. So there's no random, there's no D3, there's no D3 plus 1 or D3 plus 2 or D3 minus 1. It's just 3. 3 is a good number, and being able to push them away 3 inches means that unless they are base to base with an objective, you are guaranteed to get them off the objective no matter which direction pretty much you're pushing them from. That's not true, but maths is complicated. The next spell is Iron Aggression, so it is a friendly upkeep spell, cost 2, range 6. Target friendly faction Warjack can run, charge, or make slam or trample power attacks without spending focus, and gains boosted melee attack rolls. Again, if you've got a single model that has, like, nothing really has difficulty hitting with him, his entire battle group is Mat 7, which we'll get onto in the next slide, but it's nice to have on a model that you need to do output. So in a lot of my lists I run a Colossal, being a prime Conflux most of the time, and I need it to hit with all of its attacks, even if it's debuffed, even if the target is Def 14, whatever, I need it to hit, and giving boosted attack rolls is obviously does that. And being able to charge for free is also really good, makes it more focus efficient. Onslaught is a great spell, so cost 2, range self, AoE control, and duration for turn. Spellcaster and friendly faction models beginning their activations in its control range gain Relentless Charge for 1 turn. So this Relentless Charge is obviously good, Pathfinder when charging, but this kind of is counterintuitive because the feat is a pulse, but this is an aura. But we'll get into that later. Onslaught is a great spell. It's on Calder, and I love Calder, and she's got a 14-inch control range. Axis has a 14-inch control range with a corollary. It's a great spell. The next one is Razor Wall. So I have issues with Razor Wall. Razor Wall used to be amazing. When you moved every single model in the unit individually, you could put a Razor Wall in front of a unit, and it would actually cause your opponent to think about what they were doing. These days, we have a prevalence of multi-wound infantry, and we also have the new movement rules, which is essentially you place, you move one model, place everything within 2, so you can completely ignore the Razor Wall in this edition. I would prefer if they change Razor Wall from this Mark II iteration to something like if it ends its activation within 3 inches of the wall or 1 inch of the wall or something like a spike trap, and just say that they take a power 10. Just modify it slightly so that it's more up to date with the current rule set, but we've already had the update. It's probably not going to happen. I would prefer Razor Wall to be, even just place a spike trap. Wouldn't that be a cool ability? Anyway, I'm just wish listing now. Razor Wall's irrelevant. Don't cast it. I've got a special beautiful template from Broken Egg Games to use for the Razor Wall. I just cast it to see that beautiful template on the table. That's about it. You shouldn't actually be casting it. It's not worth it. And then finally, Unstoppable Force. Cost 2, range self, AoE control, duration turn. While in the spellcaster's control range, models in his battle group gain Bulldoze. So if you've already got a Colossal, kind of irrelevant because they've got bulldoze already, but if you've got lots of little light warjacks, especially negators that can run 12 inches or 14 inches on your feet turn, this can be super strong. You can either run behind an opposing player's model and push it 2 inches towards you. You can push units so that they're pushed out of 3 inches of an objective, or you can push them out of a scenario terrain piece with the 3-inch bulldoze. This is just, yep, this is really, and you can't do it when you trample for whatever reason. I'm sure there must be some broken combination. Can be quite clutch. In the lists that I play with a single Colossal and a Corollary and Axis, not overly relevant, but of note, Axis gets it as well if you really wanted to do that. And yeah, that is the entire spell rack. So his feat is I'll make note, his feat is a pulse. I've written it twice on this. Remember when you're playing him. When you are feating with him, everything in his control range at the time of feating is affected by his feat. So what that means is that if you want a 14-inch aura, he needs to finish within 5 inches of the corollary to get the aura increase. So if you walk out of the aura of the 5 inches of the corollary in feet, you're only going to be feeding on 12 inches a 12-inch control area as opposed to a 14. So my advice is, with your corollary, always move the corollary first to be within 5 inches of where you expect Axis to be, and then activate Axis and then feat with him, right? So enemy models currently in Axis control range suffer -2 speed and -2 to melee damage rolls, and cannot charge or make slam or trample power attacks. That's aspect 1 of the feat. That is an amazing feat in itself. If you just didn't have anything in the second part of the feat, this would still be a good feat. I'm pretty sure that's like, isn't that Anathea's, what's her name? It's the Storm Legion caster, Debaro. So her feat is friendly faction models, Game Reap, no, that's irrelevant. Enemy models suffer -2 speed and def. That's her feat. And then friendly models get repo. Look at this feat. This feat is absolutely amazing. This feat is an A+, if not an S feat. This is a classic time walk feat that we used to have in Mark II, and they pretty much have gotten rid of in Mark IV. And here it is in its beautiful form. So your opponent, -2 speed, -2 melee damage rolls, cannot charge. So whatever their threat range is on walking and hitting something. So on the best of warjacks, it might be speed 6 and 2-inch reach for an 8-inch. That then drops down to speed 4 with a 2-inch reach. So if they're not within 6 of you and they don't have any other ways to move that model, they're not getting into melee with you. And if they do get into melee with you, the thing that they're hitting, which is like, if it is your Colossal or a warjack in your battle group, it's also effectively +2 armor because of the second part of the feat, and they can't charge, so aggression is irrelevant. Yeah, like this even shuts down Invictus, and nothing shuts down Invictus. So remember, if you're playing Invictus, this is an important note, or any other caster with Energizer, that they are within 12 inches when you feat, not 14, because if they're within 14, they'll just Energizer them out of the feat. Oh no, that's not how it works, because it's a pulse. It's a pulse. That's not how it works. I played it wrong in a game that I played like 2 months ago. Anyway, really good. Your models get +2 speed and +2 to melee damage rolls. As a result of this, I like to take models that already have high threat. So Obstructors, for example, with their speed 6 and reach, or Negation Angels with their speed 6, their apparition from Hypatia, and just their general flying and all that. And then +2 to melee damage rolls. So it's not really, this feat is obviously not benefiting anything that's got a gun. So your list should be majority models that are wanting to punch things. Charge far, punch things. And we'll get into that later. Sorry, I talked a bit too much about everything on that previous slide. Maybe this slide should be first. It probably should, because I go into a lot of detail in the previous one. But stat line, speed 5, sad. Arcane attack 6, whatever. He's got battering ram, and that's about it. Who cares? Mat 7, really good. Makes all the warjacks in his battle group. Mat 7, just really good. Great. Rat 4, so sad, but Rat 4 is not nothing. You need 10s to hit Def 14, which is probably what your opponent's battle group's highest defense will be, maybe 15, with things like Surefoot or anything that adds to +2 defense. I know there's a slew of them out there. Rank 4 is not horrible, right? It's fine. He's Def 14, Armor 18, adds up to 32. 32 is a magic number. This is a great stat line, or one of the better stat lines in the game. 14, 18 is great. 14 is an inflection point, I feel, for models to hit effectively. Even character Warjacks that are Mat 7 hitting him, or missing him 42% of the time. I think 14, 18 is great. And if they're getting into melee with you because you have unyielding, you're armor 20, which is good. And yep, arc 6, control 12, standard, and 18 hit points, so normal. Sorry, one thing I should make note of is that Axis himself is not a constructor. He's actually a living dude inside of a suit. So that, like, it doesn't really matter that much, but just remember that he is a living model in your, like, when your opponent's wanting to do stuff. It doesn't really matter anymore. There used to be, like, Beacon was only construct models could charge +2 inches. That doesn't exist anymore, but it's relevant. So he's got 2 melee weapons, action and reaction. Range 1, power 14, magical typed, and they get, and they have beat back on them, and double strike. So whenever you buy an attack, hang on, they don't have a magical weapon on them. Scrap that. They're not magical. They're not magical hammers. They're just hitting hammers. There's nothing magical about them. That's really odd. I thought they were magical. Anyway, and double strike. Double strike is good because you can spend focus or fury points to make 2 additional attacks for each focus you spend. Normal Warcaster spend 1 focus to get 1 attacks. He spends 1 focus, gets 2 attacks that are Mat 7, power 14 with beat back. Good. Yeah, like, what else is there to say? That's good. It's a good ability to have. And finally, he's got no range attacks, which is sad panda, but, you know, that'll happen. All right, so we're going to go into the Warcaster ratings now. So 5 categories, A, B, C, D, F. They get it allocated in a letter based on my subjective opinion, and then they get aggregated at the end, and we come up with an overall score for where the caster sits. It's mainly for people's interest. We're not doing Japanese. The Japanese version, which is S starting, it's just, I'm not Japanese, so A, B, C, D, F. It's what we do in school here. It's what we do in university here. We'll just stick with that. So in things in favour of his survivability score. So def 14 on 40mm base. So 14 is obviously a great def. He's on a 40mm base. There are a lot of 40mm or bigger bases in this army, which means that you can block line of sight to him pretty easily, which is good for his survivability. His armor 18 with 18 boxes, so that's probably about average. It's fine. But if they're trying to hit you in melee, you go to armor 20 with 18 boxes, which is obviously better, but still probably just passable, really, in the current very lethal meta. Yeah, anything that if you're feated, like, God knows what's getting into you on your feat turn, into melee with you on your feat turn. But if something is somehow able to get into you, into melee with Axis on your feat turn, you'll be armor 22. So they're probably not going to kill you when you're armor 22 unless you've got significant numbers of debuffs on you, or if they're shooting you, which leads directly into the next point, which is you have access to cheap shield guards, either in the Conservator, which synergize well with him, or with the Steel Cell Protectors, who also synergize well because they love his feat, they love Onslaught, they are a melee unit that benefits from his melee everything. So he's like, yeah, those are all things that work in his favor. Things that don't work in his favor. Again, no ranged weapon. If he's punching stuff, it's probably not going well. Either your opponent's jammed you or it's not going well. He doesn't have any real inherent defense against ranged or magical attacks. Besides the faction shield guards, he himself doesn't protect against ranged or magical, and so he can be quite susceptible to a ranged assassination. If Kane gets within 19 inches of Axis, you're probably dead. Simple as that. As soon as he gets Calamity in, just GG. And he wants to be very forward to threaten the feat, because you want to be catching your opponent's entire army in the feat, because then you are essentially time walking the entire time. For time walk is a term for people that don't understand. Basically, just means that you get another turn without your opponent doing much. And as anybody who's played Age of Sigmar will know, having a double turn is pretty good. So yeah, he wants to be forward. He wants to threaten the feet, going a long way and catching every single model in your opponent's army. But what that means is that he's playing a bit more forward than most of the other casters in the army, and this can affect his survivability. So I've given him a B for this. So personal threat protection, speed 5, range 1 melee weapon, no gun. Only battering ram is his offensive spell. The feat and beacon, well, the feat buffs his output, so he can go to power 16 on feat turn. But there's no other way that he can buff his output, so he's usually hitting at power 14 pretty much every turn. He does get to make 2 attacks every focus that he spends, so that's obviously, 2 power 14s is better than 1 power 14. Like, that makes sense to say. Compared to most other Warcasters that don't have 2 attacks every focus they've spent. And I just want to circle back to his personal threat. So he is 9-inch threat, 11 inches with beacon, and then potentially with beacon and feet he goes to 13. So that's nothing to sneeze at. But that's a lot of work that you've got to do to get him onto whatever that target is 13 inches away. And there will be situations when this is relevant, but the beacon in my list is on my Colossal, and so my Colossal is almost always going after Axis so that it can benefit from the feat. And so it's really only an 11-inch threat, and then you're not really threatening much 11 inches away from where you might be. Like, it always depends on what's happening on the table. But yeah, look, I think his personal threat projection is fine. This was like, is this a B? Is this a C? I just went with a B because if he does get to onto a target that's 11 inches away from him, like if your opponent puts a heavy within 11 inches of him and he gets to feet and charge it, it's probably dead with like 3 focus that he spent to do it, and then you hit and run and bring him back 3 inches. Well, you move up, well, you charge it, your feet, or your feet, you charge it. Anyway, order of activation issues, but essentially because if it's 11 inches away, you need to feet to get to it in the first place, but then you might not be feeding on everything that you want to feet on. This is what I'm talking about. So his personal threat, it's fine. It's between a B and a C. It's probably a B minus, but I'm just giving single letter results to these categories just for simplicity's sake. All right, Battlegroup support. So he's got on his spell rack Iron Aggression, great spell on a Colossal, good spell on any other Warjack that has 2 melee weapons. He's already mat 7, so it's not necessary, but nothing in the faction has aggressive, so the free charge is always worthwhile. But you can put this on a cipher. You can put this on a conservator. Like none of them are gonna hate having this spell on them. Like, it's an absolutely fine spell. Best, I think, on a Colossal, and that's where I put it on my Conflux. Onslaught, obviously. We've already got a lot of Pathfinder on our Battlegroup models, so the floaty Warjacks, the flying Warjacks, and the Colossals all have Pathfinder. So really, the only Warjacks that you are affecting with Cohort, the only Cohort models you are affecting with Onslaught are the walking heavy vectors, which you're probably taking a cipher or 2 with him if you're not taking Colossal, or if you're just putting one in your list, because I'll get to that later for some secret sauce. But yeah, like, it's fine. The feat obviously makes everything better, Battlegroup and units and everything. It just makes everything better. And then Unstoppable Force, if you've got fast Cohort models like Negators or Tesselators, I don't know why you ever have Tesselators, but if you have those ones, Corollary to Pinch can do it at speed 6, can run 11. You can bump stuff out of objective zones that you're not going to kill, or you can bump stuff into threat range of other models. So that's another thing you can do with it. So I've given it a B. All right, so again, army support, it basically applies. Everything I said in the previous slide applies here, because all of his stuff does everything for everyone except for Iron Aggression. You obviously can't put that on an infantry unit. Onslaught good, feat's good. He doesn't really do anything else to personally help units except for give them the feat. So it's fine, it's a B. All right, so focus efficiency. This is the only category where I think he falls down. So efficiency is about using your resources efficiently, but effectively. So he's got 6 focus to spend, and his turn consists of upkeeping iron admission. Iron aggression, and then potentially spending 2 to cast onslaught. That's his activation. And then turn 2 or 3, he's going to feed. If you're feeding turn 1, either you or your opponent's doing something wrong. So yeah, like he's probably got 3 spare focus every turn. Again, I'd love it if he could just spend 2 focus to put down a spike trap instead of the razor wall or something like that. Just another way to spend the focus. If he had another 2-cost spell that was actually good, that wasn't situationally good, like Unstoppable Force or Battering Ram was just always good, then, like, if he had Rock Wall instead of Razor Wall, like, that's also a good thing that he could do. But anyway, he doesn't really do much with his focus until your opponent is in your face, and then he gets to really shine because he doesn't want to camp anything. He just wants to use it to beat your opponent's face. So yeah, so look, I've said C here. I think 1 spell change potentially pushes him up into B, and if he got a really good spell, he could probably go up into an A. But yeah, I think he's just missing that 3rd clutch spell to spend down to 1 or 2 and actually use his stack efficiently. So the overall rating that I've given him here is a B minus, which I think he's probably a B level caster. B for boring, I think Connor would say. He really doesn't like Axis. He doesn't get it. Well, I mean, he likes him. He knows that he's good, but yeah, he is boring. But I like boring. I like running forward and feeding and seeing if my opponent can beat my gear check, which most times they can't. Spoiler alert. Yeah, B for boring. I think that's good for Axis. Right, so let's talk list construction. So starting with the battle group, you're always going to want a corollary. It increases its control range for onslaught and for the feat, and as a result, it's always you should always have this as your first 5 points. Now, the next thing that I would include, I personally like including a colossal. It likes his feet. They both go up to power 23 on the charge. They both threat 2 inch further, so 12-inch threating colossal is good. It out-threats most other colossals without a speed buff. Iron aggression is obviously great on the colossal because you're getting a lot of work out of it and you're charging for free, which means you're effectively, a 4 focus warjack at that point. Obviously, Unstoppable Force loses value, but that's really not that big of a deal. And then we'll go from the top. So the Assimilator could probably make an argument for its inclusion. Power 16 Weapon Master with Grievous Wounds on feat turn, not horrible. And the Ground Pounder's okay because you're Rat 4, but you're getting multiple attacks with it. So you could probably make an argument for an Assimilator, but it only threatens 11 even with the feat. That's why I'm not a big fan of the floaty warjacks. They just don't do enough. They just don't threaten far enough even with all of this. So yeah, like they've got the same speed as a colossal, and they don't have reach. Anyway, Cypher. So the Cypher I really like with Axis because it has Blasted Earth, so it will that is on hit. So you don't actually need to directly hit to get the Blasted Earth trigger, which is -2 speed. And so you can essentially make an opponent's model -4 speed. So if that 6-inch speed, 2-inch reach warjack that we were talking about before, that was threatening 8 inches, let's say 11 inches with charging normally, your feet on it, its threat drops from 11 inches down to 6 inches, so speed 4 and range 2. If you put Blasted Earth on it, it is now speed 2 and range 2, so it threats 4. So it's not touching anything. That's a heavy that's done nothing for an activation. Happy days, right? The Conservator, you could make an argument for the Conservator. It's cheap. It is armor 22 and his feat turn. Armor 22 against melee attacks of opponents' models that were in your feat. There's so many caveats, but opponents' models that were in your feat area at the time that he feated. But essentially, armor 22 and then armor 24 with unyielding. So there's an argument to be made for Conservators. They also give him shield guards, which he really likes, and if you're playing him up the field or more aggressively, Conservators are never a bad option. And he's going to take a few infantry, so you're going to be triggering the Hand of Vengeance often, I would say. And then they hit a power 19 on feat turn with Hand of Vengeance, so not horrible. The Inverter obviously likes Onslaught and threatens 9 inches or 11 on feat turn. It's just a solid Warjack, especially with Mat 7. It's not a horrible target for Unstoppable Force. Yeah, it's not a wrong choice. Modulator, I don't think I'd ever run it. It's more of a range jack than it is a melee jack, and yeah, I think I'll just leave it at that. Similar story with the monitor, except the monitor can bring beacon, but you've got one chance at it, and that's something that I am not a fan of. That's why I take the Conflux, basically because you've got 2 shots at that Rat 4 beacon to get the rest of your army charging an extra 2 inches on feat turn, which is relevant. So you can take a monitor. I think it's just better to take a Conflux from my point of view. The Negator and the Tessellator, so I don't think I'd ever take the Tessellator just with Axis, just don't even consider it. Negator potentially, especially if we're running a list with Negation Angels in it, which we will get to later. The Speed 7, running 12, running 14 on feat turn with Unstoppable Force means you can push other opponents' models into your threat range. And that the value of that can't be understated. And it's just a solid little 5-point Warjack for contesting purposes or just getting in the way. Especially 13-17 against melee. Not bad. So yeah, any melee jet Warjack fits well with him because he's got Mat 7 and he buffs melee in a number of ways. Battle Engine, so feat speeds a tap up to speed 7, so threat 17 on feat turn, armor 21 against reciprocal attacks if they get into melee with you and they were under the effects of the feat, which is not nothing. Armor 21, 31 boxes, it's pretty good. So let's go on to units. So I like the units with him, resilient, and that are resilient and play into his melee damage debuff feat. So the models that fit this bill are Obstructors, they're arm 18 shield wall, Reciprocators, they're arm 19 shield wall, and Eradicators, who are arm 18, don't need to be in shield wall, but they just get bucklers. But I also like units with the better threat ranges to make them even more egregious. So Negation Angels and Obstructors fit this build. I like units with CMA or Gang to help him hit because he doesn't have any inherent buff to hit, and a lot of our stuff is Mat 6. And so that leads me to Obstructors and Negation Angels, which kind of do the same thing. They both threat a long way. The Obstructors threat 15 with Beacon and Feat. Negation Angels with Beacon, Feat, and Apparition threaten 16, which is, pretty insane threat range. And they both can threat their increase their melee hitting, with the Obstructors have CMA and the Negation Angels have Gang. So both of those are good ways to buff your mat. And then other units that shoot and like plus your speed for threat range extension, so Reductors and Perforators. I don't mind Reductors, I'm coming around to them. I didn't think they had a use, but range 6 sprays that ignore your friendly models, not bad. And when the UA or even them are speed 8 and then place 2 and then spray 6, 8 to 6 and then 1.3, 17.3 for power 13 sprays, pretty good. It's unfortunate that they don't have dual attack. I think they would almost be an auto include if they had dual attack, but they don't. They took that away from them, so it's fine. Come back to the solos. So I'm not a big fan of Enigma Foundries anymore, but if you're going infantry heavy, they will probably make their points back. So they're never a bad include. I think I always want one Frustrum Locus, if just to give an arc node, but also it gives you a range dispel, which is invaluable when he can't remove buffs himself. If you're taking the list that's got Negation Angels, you take Hypatia because she increases your threat range. You can hide them behind forest and apparition them into the forest, which gives them line of sight and they can charge. I say consider Hypatia. If you're taking Negation Angels, at least if you're taking 2 units or 3 units of Negation Angels, can take Hypatia. And then the only way that I ever get Axis killed is via shooting, so I just hit the lizard button 3 times for Steel Soul Protectors, and then take them out later if I have to, but usually 3 of them stay in the list. They like the feat, they like Beacon, they threat 14 inches on feat turn with Beacon, they have Grievous Wounds, which is great into War Beasts, will create into any cohort models really, and they're power 14 weapon masters on feat turn. Again, they're mat 6. This is part of the problem, but they're still fine. And then servitors can be cute. Power 16, 10 charges are cute, and the flare can help with hitting, as Axis doesn't have a way to hit. So you could include one unit of servitors, and you probably wouldn't be wrong. And then finally, command cards. So Lucky Penny, Old Faithful, Hit and Run, and Blessing of the Gods I will always take. Lucky Penny and Old Faithful for obvious reasons. Hit and Run because Axis has a pulse feat, so you want him to move up, and then feat turn you want to play Hit and Run to move him back 3 inches. And then Blessing of the Gods because he doesn't have a way to ignore opponent's spells. That's just for if the Colossal's going into something, or if he's going into something that has a def or arm buff, you can ignore it for that activation. Relevant. Defenses, like even more meh now that we know that they're going away halfway through the year. When that change does happen, I'm probably going to put a wall in for Axis to hide behind for 2 points. That is probably a relevant change, but the defenses card I'm just not going to take as long as Sapper exists. We've got Careful Recon. It's an option, less value with Onslaught, but if you just want to walk someone as opposed to charging them, Careful Recon's not a bad option. And I've got Careful Recon as my 5th card currently. Sapper, again, not crucial, not bad. Will be going away in a couple of months' time. Duck and Cover. There's no great units to put it on. I don't think I would take it just to put it on unit of Obstructors or Angels, so meh. And Breakthrough, fine. You can take Breakthrough if you want. If you're running the Angel heavy list, they've all got Breakthrough now, so maybe don't take it if you're running the Angel heavy version. But yeah, it could be relevant. Right, final list. You're going to get 2 lists in this wash up, so yeah, just be grateful, because usually I only give 1, but I'm going to give 2 because I have not really been able to decide between this one and the next one. So let's talk through this one. Axis, Corollary, Prime Conflux. I think I've said enough times why I'm taking those 2 models in the battle group. The TEP gives you some infantry removal options. Again, as I was saying, you don't have a way to buff your mat outside of CMA really, and so it just gives you a bit more infantry clearing, and it can go on a flank in like payload and walk your objective up, and there's not a whole lot that can touch it that it can't eradicate if it needs to. In this list, I've got 1 Frustrum Locust. I think potentially if I could learn to play better, you could probably include 2 Frustrum Loci in this list and take 2 Steel Soul Protectors, but this is how the list is at the moment. It gives you a Dispel, gives you an Arc Node for that critical battering ram if you need it. It's fine. 3 points. It's fine for 3 points. Consider it a flag and do God's work. 3 Steel Soul Protectors. I've already said why they're really good with him. That's why they've lizarded 3 of them in. 3 units of Obstructors in this list. So again, speed 6, range 2, threatening 11 at baseline, 13 with beacon, 15 with feet. The power 12 at baseline got a 14 with the feet. They've also got a shield. They've got CMA. There's multiple reasons why I like them in this list, and so they get max FA. I'll come back to the off effects. Let's talk about the reciprocators first. So again, same thing, speed 5 with reach, so they're threat 10 naturally, 12 with beacon, 14 with feet. On feat turn, they can go up to power 17 on their melee attacks, and the good thing I like about the synergy here is that because your opponent's models can't charge, on his feat turn, you can afford to go empowered weapons, because things that you don't want to charge, you probably can't charge anyway because of the feat. So on feat turn, you should be getting power 17 pole arms and power 14 shields with these guys pretty much every activation that you get, unless there's something that was obviously out of feat, and that can be bad. You may want to set defense in that situation. Most times you're allowed to empowered attacks because of Axis' feat. The reductors, again, they give you a bit more infantry removal. They're good for camping a back objective. If your opponent runs chaff onto the objective with them, you can clear it pretty easily. They have a transverse because rerolls. Well, first of all, the transverse enumerator has another spray 6. That's 6 range 6 sprays, but they also give the unit rerolls if you need them on that turn. So really good. We'll come back to the op effects now. So the only reason why I've got them in this list and why there could be something else is because these guys are, this is my competitive list. This is probably what I'll be taking to the Australian Masters in a couple of weeks' time. The opt effects are there purely for the Grimkin matchup. If your opponent's playing Dreamer and you don't have magical attacks, you're going to be sad panda. and you don't just want Blessing of the Gods to be the only way that you can kill their cohort models. So the opt effects are there to give models magical attacks. You can do cute things like if they're the only things they've given you are Incorp battle group models, you can charge with a unit of obstructors or reciprocators, put magical attacks on one of them, and just CMA with that guy. And that's the way that you get your magical attacks into the Incorp. And you're probably not doing maximal damage, but you're probably doing more than you would be if you didn't have magical attacks. Otherwise, the opt effects just walk around behind the conflux and heal it for any chip damage that comes from range, because it is like only range 20, but it will take chip damage from range. And so that's all they really do. They follow the conflux around and just fix it up, and or feed a focus if I need to. I think this list is really good. As I said, this is, well, I say likely, this is my second list for the Australian Masters in a couple of weeks. And it only drops into a few certain matchups, but matchups where I think it's going to be really effective. And so I really like this list in particular. So this list is it's obviously similar to the previous one. The difference here is that the obstructors come out and you get the angel boat. And the reason why I like the 3 units of negation angels and Hypatia is that 16-inch threat range and the ability to project threat. 16 inches cannot be understated. I don't think negation angels are quite there. I think for them to be worth it, they need to be 5 boxes each. I've said this before. I don't think they're worth it at 6 points. I think at 5 with 5 points in one box, maybe then I would be considering them. Outside of this list is obviously a range threat skew, and so they fit well with this archetype, but the reason why the negation angels lose out to the obstructors is because they get 5 attacks with the obstructors, and the opponents need to kill 5 models that are armor 18 or 20 on defeat turn, as opposed to 3 models that are def 14 but armor 12. So they just sneeze at them and they die. And so I was playing this list for a little while, but the obstructor list has taken the kind of the glory from this list as a result. Well, thank you everybody for watching the video. I hope this helps, especially the newer players that are jumping back onto Convergence after a while off. Axis is a great caster. He's probably a bit boring, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. If you've got a good boring caster, it's often not a bad place to start your journey with a faction, because you don't need to worry about your caster, you just worry about how everything else works around him. And he's got some nice inherent synergies in the way that he plays, and with the models in his army. And so I think that overall it's actually quite a good experience. I think, not for your opponent, obviously, the time walk feed is just absolutely ludicrous and just quite rude, to be perfectly honest. But you've got it, so why not use it? And just be careful, because I have gotten him killed many times, trying to be cute. And you don't need to be cute. He will win the game for you on attrition quite comfortably, even if you don't do a whole lot. Even if they've already killed half of your army and you feed on half of your army, you're still probably in a favorable position with the punchback. So yeah, there will be a battle report going up next week, which will be Axis using the obstructor list. Tune into that if you want to see how it plays on the table. That's kind of the idea of this stuff. I do this report, and then a week later you get a I do this deep dive, and then a week later you get a battle report with the list that I created, so you can see how I played it on the table, including a massive gaff which I made during that battle report. So look forward to watching that. All right, thanks very much, guys, and I'll see you next time.